Hey guys, so today I'm gonna be starting something a little different on my channel, and this is when I'm presenting to you all comic reviews. So the reason I've decided to do this is because I love reading comic books. I've always had been ever since I was in 5th grade, and I still do to this day, since it's one of my favorite hobbies. I would do game reviews, but they seem pretty difficult and very time consuming to make, so I thought doing comic reviews would be much easier to do. So yes, in this first comic review, I am reviewing Sonic Universe: The Shadow Saga, the very first arc of this comic series that centers around my favorite character, Shadow the Hedgehog, starting with issue 1. And back in my history and memories with the Sonic Comics video, I mentioned that I read only the first 4 issues of this series, and I've heard that it actually lasted around 94 issues or so. And most of them also had 4-issue story arcs, where they allow other characters besides Sonic to flesh out and develop. And yet, I've never read any of the others past issue 4, so I really hope to read those when I get the chance. And I believe it takes place in the same continuity as the main comic series, considering that it's a spin-off. So anyway, be sure to check out my history and memories with the Sonic Comics video if you haven't already. I'll pretty much put the card on top of the screen. So yes, without further ado, let's review Sonic Universe issue 1. Alright, so the first issue of Sonic Universe opens up with Shadow the Hedgehog's and Metal Sonic's battle. They are transported to some sort of a different world, and Shadow mentions that they have dueled across 2 worlds, meaning that the fight has already happened previously in the 196th issue of the main Sonic comic series and the 40th issue of Sonic X respectively. The former I've never actually read, but I vaguely remember reading the latter from a YouTube video, I think way back when I started buying these comics, but I'll explain more on that later. Anyway, so he tries to convince Metal Sonic that he's also a living weapon and to not let Dr. Eggman use him as he did with himself. I assume that probably happened in the comic prior to this. And Metal Sonic, instead of agreeing, proceeds to kick Shadow into the ocean, expecting him to drown, and flies away, deciding to search for the mad scientist of this world. Shadow, however, was somehow able to swim back up, but is left stranded in the ocean until Blaze the Cat and Marine the Raccoon, who are on the ocean tornado, come to his rescue. So it looks like this comic potentially takes place after the events of Sonic Rush Adventure. And the funny thing is that I've actually read this comic a couple of months before I first played the aforementioned game, and it was also before I played Sonic Rush as well. So this was probably my first time ever seeing Blaze the Cat. So yeah, that's weird, I know. So after they bring Shadow aboard the ship, Blaze asks him if he's related to Sonic, and Shadow replies that he's obviously not, and that their paths have presumably crossed. He explains to them that he was fighting with Metal Sonic, who apparently has the ability to move between zones with some kind of engine. Okay then. He then questions that the world he is in is not Mobius, and Blaze reveals that this is her own world. She introduces herself and Marine, and Shadow immediately asks her to captain towards the nearest port, and instantly forgets to call her by her name, which is pretty funny. Shadow asks Blaze how she knows who Sonic is, and this leads to Blaze telling us a backstory. She was out to find the Soul Emeralds since she, as a princess, is destined to protect them. Her connection with them seemed to have been giving her visions, and it kind of seems like she's dreaming or tripping balls in this part right here. She then follows their energies, which led her to Mobius, and it looks like one of the people she saw in her visions was Sonic himself. And the comic itself states that it happened in the 160th and the 161st issues of the main Sonic comic series. So I guess Sonic Rush also got a comic adaptation? That's quite interesting, I'm not gonna lie. I guess guessing this is one of the few Sonic comics that I'd like to read soon, because I don't know why. I just find it like pretty interesting for some reason. Then she explains the events of the Rush Adventure arc, where Sonic and Tails were transported to a world by a freakish storm, and Marine found them stranded there, who had found one of the Chaos Emeralds. And okay, I do not remember this happening in the actual game itself. So it's rather inconvenient how she managed to find one here in Blaze's world. Kinda weird. So yeah, the emerald ends up being stolen by Johnny, the robot pirate, who eventually gets away, and Sonic, Blaze, Tails, and Marine decide to sail from island to island, doing their best to search for the clues. They finally manage to track down Captain Whisker and Johnny as they kick their butts, and yada yada yada. So if you played Sonic Rush Adventure, then you already know what happens here. And then Marine finishes the whole story, and I gotta say though, I really like her point of view in these panels right here. It reminds me of definitely reminds me of a certain Powerpuff Girls episode. So after that whole flashback, Shadow then explains to Blaze that he was currently doing a mission, saying that he was trying to breach through a special zone in order to obtain a Chaos Emerald before Metal Sonic showed up and screwed his crap up. As they finally reach the ports, Blaze notices that the village is being attacked, and Garden informs her that the village is being attacked by, of course, Metal Sonic, who demands to provide this unit with the location of your Dr. Robotnik. Shadow and Blaze then find Metal Sonic causing the destruction of the village, and the former says he'll try to reason with the robot. Also, Blaze, what do you mean by your Metal Sonic? I mean, I know she's referring to the dimension that Shadow is from, but it should be obvious that a robot like this was made by Eggman. So yeah, so she tries to attack Metal, but her pyrokinesis powers seem to be ineffective against him, and Metal Sonic just straight up punches her in the face. Ouch. So after helping Blaze up, Shadow once again tries to take on Metal. He attempts to use a Chaos Spear, but Metal somehow throws him into a wall before he can do so. Like, what the heck? So did he just grab Shadow's hand and then just throw him into the wall just like that? Because from this panel right here, it kind of seemed like it happened so fast. So like, what the heck? That was so weird when I saw this the first time. Oh, and suddenly Marine appears out of nowhere and jumps on Metal's shoulders and punching his head. But this makes things much more difficult, as Blaze and Shadow were trying not to accidentally hit her in the process, since Metal Sonic is constantly turning his head around as they attempt to make their move. Also, I kind of want to point out something right here. Shouldn't Shadow's Chaos Spear be yellow? Because if I remember correctly, they were yellow in Sonic Adventure 2, as well as some episodes of Sonic X, and in his video game's final boss, I think they were blue, as far as I remember. And I don't know if he does it in Sonic 06. And plus, why does the Chaos Spear look like an archery arrow? I've always wondered about that when I read this back in 5th grade as a kid, so kind of weird. So yeah, anyway, Metal shoots a blast at Shadow, and he throws Marine off of him, which is pretty much what he should have done in the first place. And at this point, Shadow tries to plead with Metal that it shouldn't be this way, and that he should end this wanton destruction. He also mentions that Metal is only a weapon in Dr. Eggman's eyes, a tool that's like, only created for misery and destruction, and that he should rebel against Eggman and help save Mobius. But Metal replies by saying Shadow's function is to protect Mobius, to which Shadow reluctantly responds that he does, and Metal, calling himself a unit, is only serving Robotnik as his own function, and he and Shadow are both living weapons. However, Shadow has more than one function, which is opposing one, and that they must destroy each other. So, having no other choice to end this, Shadow gets Blaze to flame the crap out of Metal so he can spin attack him with enough force to send him in the air. So now the flame attacks do damage to him. He is then destroyed by the cannons that Marine uses, but this leads to a problem. Apparently the cannons ended up destroying the dimensional engine along with Metal, so now Shadow is unfortunately stuck here. So maybe that's why he was reasoning with Metal earlier. I still don't know why he had that engine on him to begin with, like maybe considering that what happened in the other comics issues. But I was pretty much wrong earlier of what I said earlier on in this video. So it definitely wasn't Metal's ability after all. He asks Marine if she can build him a boat, just like she did for Sonic and Tails, but Marine reveals that Tails actually made it and she oversaw developments. And what? Because I remember the actual game, like she built it all by herself, did she? So I'm gonna assume she helped out with Tails building that boat or something. I don't know. That's kind of weird. But yeah, and then we get 2 panels of Shadow's silly, grumpy-looking face, which eventually turn into a meme. Like seeing him like nearly ticked up right there, like I don't know. I actually chuckled a little. I actually chuckled a little bit, like when I first saw this. You know, 8 years of reading this comic and it's still amusing as heck. And also, this makes Marine back away like a little chicken. See ya. Blaze then shows up with the Chaos Emerald. Yeah, Shadow, no chiz. Anyways, Blaze freely gives Shadow a Chaos Emerald for a good reason. It was because of Sonic's generosity that she was able to find a few Soul Emeralds on her own, as they'll serve for the rest of her search. And this was a gesture to repay the debts she owed to Sonic for assisting her, believing that Shadow is actually friends with him. And oh boy, are we going to be seeing something like that in the next issue. And I really like this part right here where they shake hands saying goodbye. You know, this whole issue is the reason that I want to see Shadow and Blaze interacting in the main series, seeing as how they're both cool, calm, collected, and edgy characters. Some people are saying that they would want to see a fight between the two, and yeah, I guess that would be kind of cool, but I'm more interested in seeing them work together in the Sonic game. And also, did she have that Chaos Emerald this whole time? I assume she wanted to wait till this very moment to do so as a reward or something, and I guess that kind of makes sense, but it's pretty questionable that she has it now. I mean, this would have helped Shadow with his Chaos Control abilities, like since he can teleport. Oh well. So, using his Chaos Control ability with the Emerald, Shadow manages to teleport to the gun headquarters where Commander Abraham Tower, who's apparently the same man from the Shadow the Hedgehog game, and one of the comic exclusive characters, Hope Kintobor, are awaiting his return. And yes, Shadow actually works for Gun, just like he did in Sonic 06. Anyway, Abraham commends Shadow for completing his mission and says that he is almost becoming his top agent, then tells him to rest up and prepare for the next mission. And that's the end of the story. And gotta say, this was a pretty good issue. I've mentioned earlier that I first read this back in 2011, and you know, that's when I wanted to buy comics that I thought were pretty compelling to read, and they were, you know, pretty interesting for the most part. So when I first read this, I had no idea, I literally had no idea what was going on. Like, I didn't know who Blaze and Marine were, heck, I didn't even know who the gun commander was, and I actually thought that Hope was a boy. But despite that, I still enjoyed reading this comic for what it is. I really like the pacing of it, and the action moments were done pretty well. I like that for the first issue of something called Sonic Universe, it doesn't even feature Sonic at all, and instead starts off with Shadow Saga, which I do appreciate since he is my #1 favorite character, and he actually gets a chance to flesh out in this comic. Besides him interacting with Blaze for the first time, I even like that he tried to be considerate with Metal Sonic, even though it was seemingly predictable that Metal would still turn on him, but still, it was pretty engaging. Another cool thing about this issue was Blaze's backstory, seeing as how all of these took place in the issues 160, 161, and 180 respectively, even though I never read those, and that set issues reprised the events of the Rush series. I even liked how in Marine's point of view, where the writers decided to go all little children's book-like in these panels, which definitely looks like an 8-year-old's drawing. And seriously, does this remind anyone of that one Powerpuff Girls episode where the girls were explaining to the mayor the events of what they did to stop a crime or something? I can't recall. And one last interesting thing is that Metal Sonic can speak, unlike the games barring Sonic Heroes and also Sonic Generations. And this has been since the 25th issue of the main comic series, and this was the first time that I've seen Shadow and Metal fight, because the second time that I have seen something like this was in the final episode of Sonic Boom. One thing I found out about this version of Metal Sonic is that he is actually version 3.0, because it's actually stated in the Sonic Universe Shadow Saga graphic novel that the model of him has been further upgraded from his last incarnation, and there is definitely a reason as to why he had a trans-dimension engine, so yeah. And to be honest, I didn't know that this issue took place after the 196th issue of the main comic series and the 40th issue of Sonic X. And as I stated earlier, I've never read the former, but I do remember reading the latter from a YouTube video, I believe sometime before or after I first read the first issue of Sonic Universe, and I honestly can't remember much of it, but I do remember Chris hugging Shadow in that one part, but yeah, besides that I don't remember much of it, but yeah, I might have to look it up. I might have to look up pages of it, just to see. But all in all, this was a good issue. I still really like reading this comic from time to time after 8 years, along with 3 other issues of the Shadow Saga that I'll be covering next, and it definitely has some good, interesting, and dynamic moments, and only 2 moments that made me laugh. like when Shadow was mispronouncing Marie's name, which only happens twice here, and these panels with Shadow's miffed expression. I literally laughed my butt off. Like I don't know why. The more that I saw it, like the more that I laughed my butt off. I don't know, because it's just too amusing. Like no wonder I see people using it as their profile pics. Like goodness gracious. But I know his expression kind of looks stupid and off model, but it's still enough to be amusing. And I really hope if there were to be another game in the mainstream Sonic series, I would like to see Shadow and Blaze interacting and assisting each other since they're my favorite characters. And thinking about this part right here, it is quite puzzling that the Gun Commander doesn't have any hatred for Shadow, at least from what I know so far, like in Shadow's game. But since Shadow is working for Gun, it does make sense on some parts, though I'll assume that he did have a grudge against Shadow in the comic prior to this. So yeah, pretty good issue as I said before. Character development, the dynamics, and pacing were really spot on. The art of this whole issue was good, although some characters looked off-model in some panels, but still fantastic. The writers definitely did a good job with this one, especially Ian Flynn and Tracy Hartley. Like, they seriously did a fantastic job with this one. So yeah, that's it for my first ever comic review on my channel. So if you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And my next comic review will be Sonic Universe issue 2. And man, that issue is full of SE2 callbacks. And I'm mostly looking forward to reviewing the next two after that one, since both of them are my favorites of Sonic Universe by far. So yep, anyway, thank you all so much for watching my video. I hope you guys are having an awesome day, and I will see you all in my next video. So peace out, and take care.